Hey y'all, hey, it's JJ Conway. I'm here with my friend Camille Thomas, and we are going to continue our study of Think and Grow Rich. Now, before we get into what I think is one of the most powerful chapters in this book, I want to clean up a few things. You know, one thing about me is I like to walk in integrity. And so last week I discovered that this beautiful link at the bottom of the screen, this beautiful link, it did not work because when I did some changes to the pricing and the structure of the class, mainly so that Camille can make more money, you know, when I made changes to the pricing and the structure of the class, it changed the underlying bottom behind the scenes link. So if you tried to register and so you could get all those bonus lessons and the Saturday lesson drops and the lesson memes and all the guide sheets and all the worksheets and then the handouts on persistence and failure and confidence building, like if you wanted all of that juicy goodness and you didn't get it because of me, then go ahead and go on this link and you can use the code OOPS and you can get a little discount on that. So that was the first thing. And the other thing I told Camille I wanted to clean up before we started is when I was talking about how as a result of this process, my contacts list has been elevated over the years, and I have personalities and gurus and TV people and athletes and people you would know in my phone now. And I made the comment like, I got so and so in here. I got 2 billionaires in my phone. I was like, well, one of them's only a 500 millionaire, so maybe I shouldn't have said it like that. And the other one's 120, and the other one's 350. But what's a couple of million between friends? You know what I mean?
Right.
From where a lot of us are, they might as well have been millionaires. But I just got caught up in the moment. If you don't know who I'm talking about, you got to go back and listen to that lesson. It was 2 weeks ago. What were we doing 2 weeks ago? Were we doing specialized knowledge? You got to go back and watch that because I was so tickled to get an email direct from him. We were talking about imagination. Okay. So, anyway, I just wanted to clean those things up because I love to walk in integrity. And I want you to know that you can trust what we're saying. We're not here to just sell you something. We're here to help you change your life. We're here to help you move the needle forward in your life and you to make those changes that you need to make, just like the changes we need to make. No matter how high you climb in your life or in your business, there are always higher heights to attain to. And every level I get to, I might have more confidence and I might be able to present better and I might be able to sell better and I might be able to love my kids better. But I know there's always more.
Yes.
All right. And part of how we get to that more is through the power of decision, which Napoleon Hill calls the mastery of procrastination. Camille, I know you agree with me that this is one of the most powerful chapters that will help people pivot their lives. Can you tell me what really stands out to you as we start today's lesson?
Absolutely. I'm going to piggyback on that again. This is one of the most powerful chapters. I read this thing, I can't tell you how many times in the last week, okay, in preparation. And because every time I read it, it was something else that stood out to me in this chapter. But it says, like to your point, one of the first things I want to say is procrastination. It's no mere statement of a theory. It is a fact that procrastination, the opposite of decision, is a common enemy which practically every man must conquer. Mm-hmm. And when I read that, I know so many times where people will procrastinate. It's not necessarily, I'll say it might be, but that they're lazy or they just don't feel like doing something. It's really because they are indecisive about whatever it is that they're having to face. Mm-hmm. They're not sure that they want to make that decision just yet. So we procrastinate. Mm-hmm. We don't prioritize. We procrastinate because there's some sort of decision between, am I going to do this or that we're not quite ready to make. Mm-hmm. And so that, in the beginning of that was just so like, it's the indecisiveness.
Indecisiveness. Yeah. And it really stops us from moving forward. And we think that we're kicking that decision down the street. But really, when we don't make a decision, we have just made a decision.
We have made a decision. That is so, so true. And then one other thing, this is in the beginning, but I went through this because there's a common theme in this chapter, and it's habit. I went through, and in this one, throughout the entire book, if you guys have read the chapters that we've already gone through, or those of you who are in the program who have access to the course, habit is a word that is used in this chapter 11 times. Habit in here can be good or bad, but he was saying that some of the most powerful leaders have a habit of making decisions and making decisions quickly. It's not just a one-time thing, but it's a habit of doing something, making a decision and being slow to change it rather than being slow to make the decision and then quick to change it. And that's one of the earmarks of a good leader is habit of making quick decisions.
And it definitely is a habit. And the funny thing for me, and I don't know if this has been true in your life, but I recently completed my taxes. And every year I go through this thing. I intend to have it ready for my accountant. She's the wealth building CPA, the best CPA in the universe. And every year for the last 14 years now, I have said, I'm going to have this done by April 15th. And every time by April 14th, I'm like, can we get an extension? I know the IRS will give us an extension till October 15th. And then every year I'm like, oh, I've got plenty of time. No, you know what? I'll get it done during the summer. I'll get it done here. And every year in October, I am filing those taxes. and I don't, I'm not going to, for other reasons we can discuss later. I don't really like to file them early. I do like to file an extension and file them, but I used to file them in like May or June. And those are other reasons. But the thing is the decisions that we don't make, they clog up our energy. And what I found with the taxes this year, because I actually had them, I already had all the stuff compiled back in May. And so it was like, why didn't I do this? And then agonizing. Well, I had forgotten that I'd already done the work. And so I went to start doing the work, and I'm like, oh my goodness, this is going to take forever. It's going to take forever. And it still took a while because I lost a lot of files. But the bottom line is total. If you add in all of the research that I did back and then and now, the total to do those taxes was 6 hours. Agonizing for 6 months, feeling embarrassed for 6 months, hoping Barry doesn't see my posts on Facebook and think to herself, when is this lady going to file her taxes? I'm going to start charging her extra. She said one of those one year, she's like, if you don't get them in by such and such, dear, and it was to everybody, so I know they weren't singling me out, but it kind of felt like if you don't get your taxes in by such and such, we're charging you an extra $1,000 or whatever it was. It wasn't that high, but it was like, woo, we're not paying. They know how to get you to move. They know how to make a decision.
Yes. And that's true. We don't think about that aspect of it either. That our inability or indecisiveness, inability to make a decision affects other people as well. So while we're agonizing over this 6 hours, she has other customers that she needs to take care of. She has other priorities. And because we're indecisive, because we haven't gotten our stuff done, we're holding up her progress. And she's probably agonizing just as much as we are over something that we should have done and give it over, and that's the thing too. We agonize and then we go back and be like, man, that didn't take me no time at all.
No time at all.
I already knew what I was supposed to do. I just waited all this. And like you said, you use that energy. You have all of these things going on, this nervousness, this anxiousness, this worry, all these things for all this time when you could have made that decision and been moving on with your life.
I mean, and we think about the phone call you need to make, and it turned and you agonize over it for months and months and years and sometimes years, like a broken relationship in your family, and then you finally make the phone call and it's resolved in 5 minutes, and you're like, I had years of my life or months of my life or hours of my life that I will never get back because I failed to make a decision.
Yes.
And not
Mhm.
only, like you said, did that reverberate and impact other people's lives, but it has impacted my life. And not only did I not get that done, but it tied up my energy to get other things done. And I think that's why people who make those decisions very quickly are so successful. They have freed up their energy, their time, their resources, their creativity so that they can move forward on other things.
Yes. Yes. I know that there's times when I had to make a decision and everybody, I'm like, they know, they say, oh, when she says she's made a decision, she's made a decision. And as I was reading this, I found that, like he talks about, Henry Ford and stuff being very slow to change them. And I'm like, no, I made my decision.
Mm-hmm.
I'm done with it.
You're playing right.
Yeah. And it's like, oh, well, and I'm like, okay, eventually it's like, okay, let me hear the other side. But again, it's not always that I change my decision. It's I made the decision. I'm just going to hear you. But ultimately, this is what it is. And I'm not going to change my mind on that because this is something that I'm very sure of. I feel very passionate about. I'm very convicted about. And I've made that decision. And so, very, a few times begrudgingly, I'd have to pull back, and change my decision. But typically, if I make a decision, I make it and I'm done with it.
Well, and then sometimes you make a decision and then new information comes. So you make another decision. And I feel that being able to walk in that and giving yourself the freedom to do that without feeling like a failure,
Yes.
I feel like that in and of itself does also free us and help us to make the decisions. It's interesting. They say opposites attract, and I find that me and my husband are very complementary. He's a very detailed and that analytical person. And I used to be more detailed and more analytical, but I have found a lot of freedom in just being more of a quicker decision maker, thinking about the big picture and letting somebody else handle
Take care of the
details.
details.
I'm more effective in that route. When I try to be analytical and I can't fall into that mode, I get paralyzed. I get that analysis paralysis, right?
Yes.
And I just want so badly to be right about things. And I had to learn how to as a leader in the Air Force, I had to learn how to let that go. That's how I grew up. That was probably why I became a scientist. Most scientists fall into that camp, right?
Yes.
But it wasn't going to work for me as a leader. So I had to adapt and I had to change. And then once you walk in that and you see how much more you get done, it's really impressive. And so I'm very thankful to have somebody on my team that can, and I'll be like, oh, we're going to do this and I'm going to do this. And he's going to be like, okay, well, who's going to do this? And who's going to set that up? And who's going to do this? And I mean, of course, I'm not going to be like, well, you, and you, and you. But, sometimes it's like, ooh, I didn't think about that. Okay, well, then let me redo the plan. But one of the things that I tell my boys is that dad will make a decision. It will be right. It will be hands down right. He will have taken all of the data into consideration,
Yes.
and the decision that he makes will be right. But the decision I make is going to be 10 times faster, and I can get 10, 20, 30 more things done in the time. And for me, I'm okay with an 80% rule because I got all this done and you got that done. But that was right. But this was done. And it was done good enough. You know what I mean?
Yes. Don't have to be perfect, just good enough.
Yeah, some things have to be right. And when it has to be right, I slow my roll and I make sure that Mr. Man is on board.
Yes.
Or that
Yes.
he's at least heard the plan and helped me think through the details.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I like what you said about that. Sometimes, you are quick to make a decision, but when you have new evidence or new facts and data, then you can make another decision. And I think that's important to note for leaders. Just because you make a decision, it may not always be right. You may be convicted about it, but if there's new evidence that's presented, I think it's very important to take into consideration that new evidence and then make another quick decision. One of the days always used to tell us, don't give out punishments on Fridays. Don't want to prolong the agony, and you want to do it as swiftly and as close to the incident as possible. Make the decision so that people can get on with their lives and they can get back to what's important, which is the mission or their life or whatever is going on. So there is a time where it's very important. I'm a C. If you guys know this, well, I'm an IC really. If you know me, I'm very
Ooh, you got a lot of conflict going on there.
a lot of conflict. It's called an assessor, and very much my style. Period. Personality type. But I have that analytical side as well, where I'm looking for that I'm looking for the facts. But I'm very personal as well. That interpersonal relationship is very important to me as well. But so I do listen to people, and then I make another decision. But yeah, so I think that's very, very important.
Well, so I find it interesting because when it comes to sales and communication, I appear as a high D, high C.
Mm-hmm.
And when it comes to relationships and leadership, I appear as a high D, high I.
Oh wow!
No S anywhere in the profile.
Right.
It's like DICS. So, but that is that. And when I got that information, that was a decision that I had to make. Okay, well, if 70% of the population is an S, and I want to connect with 70% of the population, well, guess who I need to learn how to operate with?
Yes.
Guess who I have to learn how to encourage and to motivate and uplift and all those things.
Yes.
So I love that. I love that what you said here, and I even have it here highlighted. The every one of them had the habit of reaching decisions promptly and of changing those decisions slowly if and when they were changed. And people who fail to accumulate money without exception have the habit of reaching decisions, if at all, very slowly. And some of you have been, playing around with this class and the concepts and these thoughts, and you've thought, well, I should get those MP3s and I should listen to them while I'm walking and while I'm washing dishes and stuff. But, well, I can do that later. I could do this or I could do that. And what happens is your capacity gets overflowed and it gets taken up by all of these decisions. And you need to make the decision. You need to say, when you have the moment that says, this is what's right for me, this is what's going to move my life forward, whether it's this class or something you're doing with your kids or building some relationship with your spouse, make the decision and move forward. Even if it's the wrong decision, like we were discussing earlier. I don't think there's a lot of wrong decisions in life, but there are some that don't work out as well as others. Even if it doesn't work out as well as something else could have, you still have a chance to regroup and recover faster than if you sat around worried about making the wrong decision, worried about what is everybody going to think about me, worried about, here's one. All those of us in the personal growth space, am I going to buy into another class where they're going to take my money and not give me anything?
I know that one.
I know that one. How many times? And then you're like, well, I want to move forward in my business, and I know I need to trust somebody, and I know I need to, but I can't decide on that today because I just don't want to get taken advantage of again. You know what? If I've hired the wrong person before, and you know what I've done? I have let them go and hired somebody else.
Yes.
I made another decision, but I didn't dwell on it. Not going to agonize on it. Not going to stress about it. We're going to move forward.
Yes. JJ, I think it was you hit on something on page 164, the lines 27 through 29 and then 35 through 37. It says the majority of people who fail to accumulate money sufficient for their needs are generally easily influenced by the opinion of others. They permit newspapers and gossiping neighbors to do their thinking for them. And then the other thing says opinions are the cheapest commodities on earth. I'm going to move down to 35. It says, if you are influenced by the opinion of others, you will have no desire of your own. Keep your own counsel when you begin to put in practice the principles described here by reaching your own decisions and following them. And I put in on my little things right here, we were talking about vision and stuff. And when you want to move forward, so many times people don't make their decisions. Actually, I'm writing this little thing about it in the middle of it now, but they don't make their decisions because of the opinions of others. They're worried about, well, who's going to think this of me and who's going to say this, and I can't do this. Well, what do they think, or whatever the case is. And I put, sometimes you got to move in silence because God didn't give everybody your vision. He gave it to you.
That's right.
And so they won't understand. So they're going to give you those opinions, those cheapest commodities on earth, while they're going about their business. And now you're agonizing over something someone else said. And it's because we have that fear of criticism we talked about before. But again, sometimes you have to keep your own counsel. People don't understand this. If they're not ready to receive the information that you have, if they're not on the same level where they're in a growth mindset, they will hold you back, not intentionally, but that's where they are. And so sometimes you just have to say, this is what's in my heart. This is what I know to do. This is what I'm convicted about. And I'm going to step out on faith and I'm going to do it. I don't need to hear the opinions of everybody because God has already given me his opinion. He gave it to me and he told me to move on it. So I'm going to move on it. Whether you understand it, whether you get me or not, I'm the only person that has to live this life. So I have to make these decisions for me. And the little piece I'm writing is called Who Are You? Is who are you outside of all of your titles, outside of your position, outside of your degrees, outside of your hats or whatever. Who are you? And it's making those decisions for you. So many people, you ask them what they like, they can't even tell you what they like. They like this because of somebody else or because of their spouse or their kids, and they do all these things, but they've never decided for themselves what they want and what they like and what they, want to do with their own life, sans anybody else's opinion. So I thought that was very important when you said that.
I think so too, because I remember being in that position after the divorce dust settled, and here I am on all this $800-something of debt, and my life is over, and I think my ministry's about to be over because we're getting 2 divorced ministers, and I'm here. I am a single black mom with in all this debt. Everything I set out in my life, I was not going to be. Here I am, and I remember that. Not even knowing, like, if you asked me what I wanted to eat, I wouldn't know what I liked. It was always what everybody else liked. It was, where do you want to go for vacation? It didn't matter to me. It was whatever kept the peace and whatever anybody else wanted. And it takes some time to really do that. One of the things that I find for me that helps me to make decisions, in addition to the mastermind group that he's referring to here, is to spend the time really that we've talked about, using that power of our imagination and using the abilities that we have to make a decision about, decide about our purpose and our desires and what we want, and really visualize out what we want. And so, like, for example, with my upcoming Building Wealth Together conference, I knew I wanted to take it to the next level. I knew I wanted a production team. I knew I wanted someone to work with, and I visualized what that experience would be like. And then I made the decision to invest in other people's online events and see how their production teams work. Some of them were real flops, I'll tell you what. But you know what? I found me a good one. And they have put together a fabulous back end to what was already an impressive conference. And they have taken it up a notch to the next level. And so by having that, being very clear about what I desire and using my imagination to play through it, it made it easier for me to actually be able to evaluate those who came to me according to what I wanted. Because I had already taken the time to figure out what I wanted, what my desires were. I had harnessed the power of my imagination to really begin to see it with my eyes. We talked on the bonus lesson last week about how that energy reverberates out into the ether, as you will. And so it, out there reverberating, I think that lady needs a production team, right? Everything comes together when we really make up our minds that this is what we're going to do. And it starts with that desire, doing those affirmations, that's auto-suggestion to really get it lodged in, harnessing our imagination so we walk in the energy of it and broadcast the energy of it, and then here making a decision that when the opportunity comes to me, I'm going to grab it and go. I didn't feel 100% comfortable about the costs and all the other things associated, and nobody likes to give up control. Nobody likes to give up control of their event, but I tell you what, the cost and the giving up of control have been worth it because the team, they are excellent. And I wouldn't have been where I am today, which now my podcast, Amazon reached out to me, and this person reached out to me, and that entity reached out to me, and that's why I got the new camera so I could get on TV, and all these things are coming out to me. It's not by accident. I'm not lucky. I've been using these principles in the book. And because I've been using these principles, when the decision comes before me, I can decide and roll out.
Yes. I love when he says it makes me think of this line 47. It says, you have a brain and a mind of your own. use it,
Mhm.
and reach your own decisions. But JJ, how good does it feel to be able to imagine something in your mind like this summit? This is the seventh.
The
This is the
7th,
seventh.
yep.
So how good does it feel, knowing where you come from, to be able to imagine something, to do it your way, not think about what everybody else is going to think about it, not, every what we have a tendency to do is when we're imagining, we're still putting all of these other people in there, and we're
Mhm.
structuring our imagination around what be acceptable to them, or how this would impact them or whatever. But how wonderful is it when you can imagine something that you want, and
Yeah.
then see it come to fruition and see it grow and become big every single day. And you say, I imagined it, and here I am, 7 summits later, and
Mhm.
I'm still getting better every single year. And it started with that thought, that energy. Thoughts are
It
things
did.
or
And,
energy.
and it did. And you know what? This is a really good point, because with that particular conference, it actually started on the borrowed belief of one of my mentors.
Yes.
And that's why I'm really passionate about making sure that everybody who hears me and Camille teach these classes has the access to get these lessons, so you can play them over and over and over. Because some of you, as Dr. Cheryl Wood says, you have something so great inside you, but somebody is waiting for what you're sitting on. And you're sitting on it because you don't have the belief yet that you can really go out there and make it happen. And I remember when Les now, he's the one that helped Dave Ramsey build his business up, and he's also over Dave Ramsey's coaching program. He set me down and said, look, if you want to be a big financial guru, here's what you do. Boom, 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 boom. It was basically do everything Dave does.
Yep.
And I was like, I can't do that. I can't do that. I can't do that. And it was like, okay, are you going to sit in your I can't do that, and 5 years from now still be sitting and I can't do that? Or are you going to take a step of faith forward and just try it? And between him and Rusty Hodges, they gave me their confidence and their belief. And we had that first little meeting. I don't know if I've told you this story, Camille, or if I've told the audience yet, but I decided to put together the first conference, and then I decided to have a meeting, a meetup to prep me for my keynote. I was just going to teach my keynote, and I opened it up free to the public. Guy is sitting up there, amazing guy, by the way, sitting there. He opens up his wallet and says, is this a monthly meeting? And if so, how much is the dues? Because I've got $20, but whatever it is, I want to be a part of it. And I looked at that $20. I said, yes, this is a monthly meeting, and the initial dues is $20. And we gonna add $10 every month until we get to our full asking price of $120 a year. I was just making it up, but I was like, somebody saw value. It was the first time that I had gotten paid to teach about financial principles. All the 15 or so years before that, it had all been free, and I didn't have the confidence. I didn't even know I was pregnant when I went to that session where Les Nenow and Chris Hogan poured into me after hours, and a couple others too at the Drury Inn. I didn't even. That was in what, March, and this conference was held in when I was 9 months pregnant. So that was what, 7 months or so later, 7 or 8 months later, whenever that was. I didn't believe it. All that time I hadn't gotten paid. But I borrowed their belief, and I moved forward, and I made a decision based on the desire that was in my heart. And they were part of my little mastermind, you know. And I shut out, he says down here, that in where is he at? It's where he says your family, here it is, line 42. Um Close friends and relatives, while not meaning to do so, often handicap one through opinions and sometimes ridicule. I had people in my family tell me I was wasting my life, and I had to shut that down and listen to the people who believed I could be successful.
Yes.
And
Yes.
7 years later, I'm a full-time mom and entrepreneur.
Yes. Yeah. And
Over
that
here now.
$20
And
looked
I'm
real
changing
good and
lives
made you
all
make a
over the world.
decision.
That $20, yes, boy, oh boy, oh boy.
Yep.
I tell you what, we had a good little group. That group is still there. I'm not there physically, of course, but I mean, we got about 500 members of that group now.
Wow.
Yeah, and so you don't even know what's in you.
Mm.
Sometimes you don't know the greatness that's in you. I love when Les Brown says there is greatness within you, and I believe that. I don't care what disabilities you're facing today. I don't care what family situation you're facing today. I don't care what financial situation you're facing today, medical situation you're facing today. I faced all of that. I've faced having mental cognitive issues and struggles and processing issues, sensory processing issues. I've struggled with the medical conditions. I've struggled with the family doesn't believe in you. I've struggled with not having any money. I mean, you almost can't have less money than being $845,000 in debt. But somebody believed in me, and I'm telling you today, I believe in you. I believe that you can make this dream happen, because if you couldn't make your dream happen, the Lord would not have put it on your heart.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. I've been that has been like the one thing that really has been resonating with me over this last couple years, being really, involved with mastermind groups and people like you know, that have come into my life, people that I've been working off of that borrowed belief, is that when God brings something to you, we see the meme, he brings you to it, he'll get you through it, he'll
That's
bring
right.
you through it. And I've realized that I have been capable of so much more when I trusted myself. I trusted that instinct. I trusted that intuition. I trusted God talking to me that said, no, I didn't give this to you, this particular thing to give to somebody else. I gave to you for you, and then the moment I acted on it, I was like, man, I didn't even know I could do that. I'm actually pretty good at that. And then, it started the ball rolling on some things in my life. And had I ignored that, because even like in this book, after you were talking, it says thousands of men and women carry inferiority complexes with them all through their life because some well meaning but ignorant person destroyed their confidence through opinion or ridicule. And I'll be honest, that was me. There was a lot of things that I carried, that was telling me that I was incapable, even though I know that I have the intellect to do it, or all these things. But that voice that kept saying, "No, you can't do that. You're not supposed to be able to do that." Somebody said you were never going to make it here, or you were, it was going to be half done here, or whatever. That voice kept coming back. And like he said, you have a brain and a mind of your own. Use it. Are
Mhm.
those things true? Yeah. No, they're not. And I am capable. He wouldn't have given it to me if I wasn't capable. And other people wouldn't have seen, that potential in me. But potential is just potential until you actually do something with it,
Mhm.
you know. And but they kind of I borrowed that belief and they pushed me out in front and said, we're gonna be here. We're not gonna let you fall. But you have all of the ability to get this done and to do it with excellence, and we want to see you win. And so I did. And that those things were game changers, taking the opportunity that was in front of me, not running away from that opportunity, making a decision to say, okay, even though I don't know what I'm doing, like, Richard Branson, I love that, say yes and then figure out what you need to know to get there. You know, I've been using that for years because everybody's like, how do you? I'm like, I just say yes, and then I figure out what I need to know to make it happen. And that's how I started running events and putting on, organizing certain things and observance. And then I became the go-to person. And nobody taught me that. I figured it out because somebody believed that I was capable of doing it. And I had to either show up or, sink or swim, I guess.
Yeah,
Um,
right.
I chose to swim and figure out what I needed to do to make it happen. And so, absolutely, that borrowed belief, you can't underestimate the power of borrowed belief.
Absolutely. And now with that said, though, he does give us a warning on the next page that we
Yeah.
probably ought to make sure that we mention. And you know, I fall into the last paragraph on page 164 there, where he talks about people who talk too much and listen too little.
Yes.
Ooh, that was me for most of my life. I'll tell you what. He says, keep your eyes wide open and your mouth closed if you wish to acquire the habit of prompt decision. Those who talk too much do little else. If you talk more than you listen, you not only deprive yourself of many opportunities to accumulate useful knowledge, but this is the warning. You also disclose your plans and purposes to people who will take great delight in defeating you because they envy you. And he goes on down to talk about people who will try to stop you, try to discourage you, or even worse, who will put your plan in action before you get around to it. And now you're like, wait a second, they got that from me.
How many times does that happen, JJ?
Ooh, my, oh my. And then they don't even give you credit.
At
I'm
all.
like, at least give me credit. Like when I take somebody's idea, I mean, when I apply somebody's idea, I at least try to give them credit, because I do want to walk in integrity. But I'm just like, really? But that's my own fault for being a blabbermouth
Yep.
and not taking action and
Yeah.
talking instead of doing.
Yes. I have been guilty of that, and I've also been guilty of doing, and people still take it and don't give you credit anyway. And you watching them get an award for something that you did, and you like, how does this happen? But
Mm-hmm.
that's okay, because when that happens, I always say there's more. There's no limit on your imagination except for the one that you put on it. So
Mm-hmm.
because it was something that came from me, from within, I can go out and duplicate, or I can make it better the next time, or I can do it again,
Or
and I've learned that I had to do that several times.
and that's the other thing is like when you're connected to the source of all ideas, you don't have to be afraid that all the good ideas are going to be used up. I think that's one concept that's very common throughout this book, is that there's always going to be another idea. And even if you blabbed a little too much, or you confided in the wrong person, and or I had somebody come to one of my classes one time. They took my class and went and taught their own class with my same name and my same concepts. And I was like, they came to another one of my conferences, and I was like, okay, so if you decide to take this stuff, at least call it your own name, make it your own. I know there's nothing new under the sun, but the way I put this together is the way I put it together. You
Right.
put it together on your way. And
Yeah.
that person looked at me like, well, I didn't know she had changed. And she was really in my conference to learn. This was like a year later, and I felt so bad later on when I saw what she was doing, and how she had actually given me honor and stuff like that. And I was like, she had changed. I was still holding on to that old grudge.
Yeah.
That's a whole nother lesson. But the thing is we have to understand what I learned through that was, okay, well, she took that name, but I got another name for you.
Another name. Hmm. And then you got to learn how to protect your name and stuff too.
Yes,
So
yes, yes.
that's another lesson that has to be learned. And there's some things that I'm learning still, about protecting your intellectual property and how to
Yes.
do that. So that people can't take that name and just run with it. But yeah, that is a great, great, great warning. I've seen that before, and people would delight and take great delight, not just delight, but take great delight
Light
in
of the
defeating you.
light. Woo!
Yes, because they envy you, and then they want to act like they were the one that came up when it's like, you know what? Look here, here's that petty. I can show you better than I can tell you. You can only go as far as my idea because you didn't come up with it. But within me, there's always more. I know how I can, conceive that thing. I know what it took to bring to light. You didn't. You just took the finished product and tried to go with that. You'll never be able to go much, much higher than that with that vision, because that
Mm-hmm.
vision doesn't belong to you
That's right.
you know
That's right.
and so I've been able to just do my own thing and be okay with that. And there's been times when people go, you just really gonna let them go? And I'm like, the people that were there that are new, and I'm like, you know what, I'm gonna let them have it. If it was that important, I'm gonna let them have it, because that's
Mm-hmm.
all they'll be able to say.
And I'm gonna
Won't
give us
do
an
it next
itinerary
time.
next time. Because that's what I
Exactly.
did. I went to a lawyer about 6 months ago, and I was like, "Hey, you know what? I just realized I've never trademarked this thing, and I've had my building what somebody else has a building well together podcast too." And I was like, "Well, I'm older, so they can't tell me to stop." But I was just like, "How do you? I better protect my stuff. Did I not learn my lesson the first time?"
Exactly. I'm learning now.
And but then that's a decision.
Yes.
That's a decision that we make. When she came back, I was going to hem and haw over. She's like, well, this is my program, and this is how much it costs, and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, well, I'll have to think about that later. No, later never comes. Let me get this done. Let me clear it off my plate. Let me clear my mental and my emotional energy of this thing, and we're just going to move forward.
Forward.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
And
I love this. You said, tell the world what you intend to do, but first show it. Is that what you were saying earlier?
yes.
I didn't even, I didn't realize it was on the same page.
Yeah. All good. But that's it too. Sometimes you have to tell people your ideas as you show them, the finished product, instead of telling them the plan ahead of time so that they can still make their own. You show
Mm-hmm.
them what that idea was in the form of a physically manifested thing or whatever it is. So stop talking. And say don't talk about it, be about it.
Yeah,
Show
yeah.
me what you're doing. And I want to say another thing too on this one, same page, but it says the value of decision depends upon the courage required to render them. And I thought that was so important, because many decisions require great courage, not just a little bit of courage, but great courage. And JJ, I know that you can relate to this, but in our line of work, it takes great courage to go against the status quo or the majority. And a lot of people don't make those decisions because one, they have to weigh the cost of, will I lose my career? Will I lose my position? Will I be ostracized or what's it called?
Blacklisted.
Blacklisted. Thank you. Blacklisted. Um, how is this going to affect my future promotion? Will I lose the respect of my peers for going against their decisions? And so that right there was something that I had to really fight with in my career. Making the hard decisions that went against the leadership. And I was told one time in a very serious situation that I was on the wrong side of the fight. And I
Mm,
no, I'm on the side of life.
right.
And I stood my ground. And this person was like, well, I'm going to say this about you. And I'm like, oh, really? That's where we're going with this? And it took everything. And when I say I wept and I shed some tears because I knew it was going to have negative effects, but it was the right thing to do.
The right thing to do.
And I couldn't turn my back on the fact that it was the right thing to do. And I realized in that moment, I was like, you know what? My promotion comes from somebody else.
That's right.
And at this point, there's nothing you can do to take away the rank that I have because I'm not wrong.
That's right.
I'm just not going to back y'all mess. You know what I mean? And so I had to stand firm in that. And then another person asked me, why do you fight, so hard for us? And I was like, well, why did they give me this rank if I wasn't going to use it?
Right.
For good. But it did cost me. It
Yes.
cost me promotions. It cost me positions. It cost me relationships. And when I thought about it, because I had to make that decision and stand firm in it, make it clear, I'm not doing y'all mess. I have to go to bed at night.
That's
but
right.
It takes a lot of courage to make those hard decisions a lot of times. And people, they do weigh it. And sometimes they don't think that the value of making the right decision is worth the things that they can potentially lose. But ultimately, I didn't lose anything that I didn't need anyway.
And that's the thing. Like I really identify with that because I've had a lot of times in my career where I was in positions where people wanted me to just go along and get along, just sign the contract paperwork. And it's like, but they didn't deliver what they said. You had them build this other stuff and I need them to build this so I can sign off of it. Well, we're not going to have them do that. Well, then you sign it, and, yes. and I had my second to last job in the military, I had a boss that was routinely trying to hook up friends to do this and hook up friends to do that and taking these trips and everything and wanted me to sign for stuff. And he would leave the office so that I'd have to be the one to sign the paperwork. And what they found out real quick was I wasn't going to sign for you to pay for some guy to go take a $10,000 class after his retirement date. I wasn't going to do that. I wasn't going to sign off on this other person bringing a bunch of her people to this $7,000 a person class. I wasn't going to sign off on those things because that was a lack of integrity. And, I could see so many people who wanted to get out of that toxic situation, but they were so afraid for their future. And they didn't know that there was a possible way to get out. And they felt like the best possible decision they could make was to cower in fear and to do whatever those supervisors wanted them to do. And as a leader in the Air Force, it was one of the things that really broke my heart. I had never been in any other assignment where I didn't feel like I could affect change. Mm-hmm. Even when I was in a joint environment when we had a boss that would throw things at people and scream and rant at people. And it was just, they were Army and people just accepted it because they were Army. I was like, even in the Army, you don't treat your people like that. These are scientists and engineers. These aren't folks who are used to being screamed at all day. This is supposed to be a civilized work environment. Even in that environment, I was able to affect some change for people. Not as much as I would have liked, but I have never been in a place where I felt so helpless to do any good. And it wasn't that the systems didn't exist to do any good. It's that the mindset of the people, they weren't going to move forward. They weren't going to stand up for themselves. They weren't going to stand up what was right because they were too much afraid. And I was like, look, if we all banded together, they need us to do the work. If everybody bands together and refuses to stand up for us, to stand for all of this, we can make a change. But everybody was in their little silo, and they were worried about the opinions of others, and they were worried about these risks like you were talking about, and for them to lose their job or to not have a good government job, to them that was death. And I'm like, but it's killing you to be here.
And I like when you said that too. I was thinking a lot of people will say, it's the enterprise. I'm like, what is the enterprise without the people? It's not the enterprise. It's the misinterpretations and the manipulation of a lot of the rules and the things like that that is causing the harm, not the enterprise in and of itself, but it's the human factor that we don't want to, put into the equation. But when you said, even in here, it says, I'll tell you further, line 61 and 6 through 62. This is uh, Adams, Samuel Adams, Robert Lee, and John Hancock. If you guys don't know who I'm talking about, I'm sorry. It says, I'll tell you further that if two of you agree upon the earth concerning anything for which you ask, it will come to you from my Father who is in heaven. And this is when he was talking about, this whole mastermind when they were deciding to, the founding fathers of the U.S. and deciding to do something different. We're not going to take the rule from the British anymore. What they're doing is not good. We need some change. You guys are not going to continue to exhaust us, and then step on us while we're already down, continue to use and abuse us over here in America. We're going to do something different. So they made this decision to have this mastermind of people. And it wasn't just two people, it ended up being 56 of those people. But when I read that, I thought about that too. And I'm like, Matthew 18 and 20, not to make it biblical, but a lot of these things are, very spiritual in nature. And it was just where two or more are gathered in my name, there I am in the midst of them, and they had to make that decision. Make a courageous decision in the face of death, in the face of being potentially hanged, or cut off from British rule, or all those things. They had to make a decision, and one of the hardest, but it was one of the most powerful decisions. It was the most powerful decision in terms of this country that was ever made, that broke from that rule. They said, we're going to do it our way. But they knew that there was going to be some fallout. When the governor sent that message, he had to tell them, look, I'm not going to back down from what I said I was going to do, because we deserve more. We deserve more. And so by, Sam Adams and Robert Lee and John Hancock and Thomas Jefferson, Lee had to go. But by them coming together and saying, this is what we're going to do for our people, it made a world of a difference. And we wouldn't be where we are today had those men initially, before the George Washington. George Washington was a general in the army, but he wasn't the one that made the decision to do what they did to break away from British rule. But had they not made that courageous decision, where would we be today?
Where would we be?
Where would we be? So sometimes it's so important that we don't miss the opportunity to make the right decision. And sometimes we have to be very quick, very steadfast in that decision, hold to our conviction, even if it costs us, because their cost might have been death, but look at the cost that it could have been for the entire nation over the, countries. So martyrs, yeah, but they didn't have to die, thankfully, not like that anyway. But sometimes you just have to say, it's the right decision. You should always say it's the right decision, but I'm not saying don't weigh your costs, but I don't know if I'm saying that right.
No, I'm with you, because I think about how many things do we hesitate on because we're so worried about making the wrong decision. And the reality is, if the Lord allow us to keep breathing, 5 years from now, we're going to be 5 years older, whether we make a decision for our future or whether we cower in fear and keep being dominated by bondage and toxic work environments and toxic relationships and all of these things that are holding us back. I would like everybody who's listening to me and Camille today to make a decision for your future. Make a decision for your dream. Make a decision that you are going to take one step forward tonight to move yourself forward in the direction of your dream. It just takes one step, and one after that, and one after that. And the wonderful thing about those steps is when you take that first step, you may not know how all the other steps are going to line up. Like Camille was saying, you don't have to know how. You just need to take the next step, and the how will present itself, and the next step will present itself, and the next step will present itself.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But it all starts with that one decision. That one decision. And you can make a decision too to continue to join us, to continue to get some of this good stuff that we're giving you every week, and get in on the bonus
Yes.
sessions that we have.
You need to
If
get
you
some
want,
Saturday sessions. I'm telling you right now.
yes, yes. So if you want more, the link is up there. We'd love for you to join us as we continue to go through these chapters of this book over the next couple of weeks. And you have lifetime access to them, and you get all the bonuses that come along with it. So, make the decision to invest in yourself and take a chance on yourself. Don't wait, don't procrastinate. Every day that you miss out. And I did it for myself. So don't, this is not one of those pushy things, but I see how investing in myself, learning something different, connecting with people who were thinking at a different level, higher level of awareness than me, how much it has changed and has just made my life so much better. So, and that's just real talk from me. Completely changed the way I think about things, the way I do things, the way I approach things, and all for the better. Yeah.
Yes, 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 yes. Well, Camille, this has been wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. I do want to close with the last sentence of this chapter. He says here, these instructions will be of no value to you unless you definitely decide to organize them into a plan of action. Camille and I are about to go and record another bonus lesson to drop this Saturday, but I want you, before you turn away from this computer, take 5 minutes and write down what you've learned tonight and one decision that you're going to make, and then do a quick plan of action. I'm not talking about something that's going to be an hour or two of your life. I'm saying right now, you know what you need to do. You know what the next step you need to take is. You know what you have been dreading all week long. It's been hanging like a dark cloud over you. Get it done tonight. Put it in motion tonight. Reach out and call who you need to call tonight. If it's a business decision and it's too late to call, cack up the email, cack up the text, write out what you're going to say when you call them in case you get their voicemail. Get that locked in tonight. Take action, because otherwise these instructions will be of no use to you. And as you've heard all night, Camille and I believe that there is greatness in you, and that you have everything you need to bring your dream to pass. With that, we're going to close out for tonight. I hope you've enjoyed this. I hope you'll be back with us next week. On behalf of myself and Camille, thanks for being a part of this lesson. Y'all take care and be blessed.